We are now going to begin sewing our side seams. We are going to begin at the wrist, so up to the armpit and down the side seam. When we get to the armpit, we are going to pay special attention to rotate the sleeve and bodice so that the side seam of the sleeve and the bodice form a straight line. Trying to sew with a serger around a right angle can cause the knife to cut into the fabric, leaving an unsightly notch. Creating this straight line can avoid that. We will now move over to our machine and sew from the wrist to the armpit. Begin by ensuring that your sleeve is folded right sides together and you are looking at the wrong side of the fabric. Line up the point at the wrist. And when you begin sewing, I like to lift the presser foot and slide the project as far under the presser foot as I can. Doing so helps to avoid the top layer of fabric being pushed forward, creating an uneven join. Lower your presser foot, and we will be sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you will be keeping the free edge of your project to the left of your serger knife, either removing no fabric at all or only a very small sliver of fabric. Ensure that the left side of your project remains smooth and the 2 free edges of your project are lined up together. Be careful not to stretch your project either before the serger knife or behind the serger knife. Also ensure that your project is supported on your table. The weight of your project hanging off the table can also stretch the fabric, and stretching while serging can cause wavy seams. We are now approaching the armpit of our project, and I will show you how I pivot my bodice to create a straight line with the sleeve and the bodice. Line up the seams along the armpit. Keep your free edges aligned, and sew right up to the point where your sleeve joins. Pivot your bodice to the left to create a straight line, ensuring that you do not stretch the project. Simply allow the momentum of the serger to pull it through. Continue sewing in this manner down the side seam of the bodice and right off the end of your project along the hemline. Sometimes along the hemline, the edges of your project will not line up perfectly, as you can see here. One extends slightly further than the other. We'll move over to the table and I will show you how I fix this small troubleshooting. I prefer to use a rotary cutter, and I'm simply going to follow along the curve at the hemline, creating an even join at the side seam, removing the additional portion that extends, and I'll do that to the other side as well. Smooth your project. Line up the side seams and the hemline, make sure everything is flat. Use your scissors or your rotary cutter to only remove the small portion that extends beyond. Now we're going to take a look at another troubleshooting problem. Sometimes you can miss one layer of your project and there will be a small opening. And I will show you at the machine how we can simply ease back onto our seam and sew this up. You will want to ease onto the seam just before the opening, lifting your presser foot, sliding your project under the presser foot, lowering your presser foot and easing on to the seam. You will be sewing just a little bit further in than you did before, and you will be removing a small sliver of the old seam, catching both layers of fabric and joining them together. After you pass the opening, simply ease off of your seam very gently with a curve in the same manner that you eased on. Chain off 4 inches and cut in the center. And you have now sewn your side seams.